Welcome to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Faringer, an attorney, spiritual guide, and wealth activator. I'm here to help you align your mindset for abundance and break through any glass ceilings with money. If you're ready to embrace your highest calling, manifest with more ease, and create a life that feels lighter and more aligned, then let's dive in. Hello, thank you for listening to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna. I'm going to talk about a topic today that I think is really, really powerful and is something that can help people really, really dramatically shift the way they feel about things, how things are going in their life from a financial perspective. And as I start to talk about this, I know people are probably not going to realize that this can have such a dramatic effect, but it does. And this is from a mindset that I see all the time, not just in doing the mindset work that I do with clients, but also as a lawyer. So this is about the power of choice in how you spend your money. And the way I want to talk about this is that we get to choose how we spend our money. There are maybe circumstances that arise in people's lives where it feels like something isn't a choice, like a medical expense, right? If you get very sick and you have to go to the doctor, you may not actually have a choice but to do that, right? Like you're going to have to go to the doctor and pay for that. And there's other things that happen in our lives that maybe are things that we don't have any power over. But the very large majority of our financial choices are our own, and how we spend money every day is our choice. And there's a mindset there where people have this belief that they don't get to choose how they spend their money because it's either going to things that they need or because it's going to things that they have chosen to spend their money on, or maybe it's because of lifestyle choices that they've made. And they look at it like, well, I don't have a choice but to pay that. I'm going to go through some examples of where this comes out. I mean, I have an endless amount of examples when it comes to this, but the reason this is so important is because if you're looking at every single thing in your life as an obligation, it's going to feel super heavy when it comes to money. If you're looking at everything in your life as this was based on a decision I made, I'm acknowledging that this was a choice I made, even if I would make a different choice now, and I'll give you an example of that. It's a choice that I made and I have to deal with it now. And being upset about it does not help you. Being mad about money, it does not help you. I've said this so many times. I will say this over and over and over again. Worrying about money is a choice. It's not about the circumstances that are happening in your life. It's a choice. You are choosing to worry about money. You are choosing to make money heavy. You are choosing to make money stressful. It's not stressful. And the more that you realize I have the power to decide what I do with my money, the more power you realize you have. And it starts to give you a new basis for deciding how to spend your money. So I'm going to go through a bunch of examples of this, but I want to give you an example of choices. People will make choices. They'll make decisions about things in their life. And then when they have to pay out money as a result of that choice, they're often upset about it. So I'm just going to use debt as an example. And there are different types of debt. There's things that are considered good debt, and there are things that are considered bad debt. In the finance world, things that are considered good debt are like a mortgage for a home. That's because the debt is being incurred to build an asset that will hopefully in the future have more value than the debt you incurred. Generally, that's true with home ownership, not always. And I know right now that that's tough with the interest rates, but a mortgage is considered good debt. Student loans are considered good debt because it's basically a loan and you're building an asset in yourself, in the income, in theory, that you will be able to make as a result of the education you're getting. I'm sure there are people listening that are like, my student loans didn't do anything. Okay, well, that's a choice. That's a choice and a mindset that you're making. And I'm going to use student loans as a very good example. But credit card debt is not good debt. It might be if it's in a business because it's deductible. But, and I'm not a financial professional. So there's a financial professional listening to this, I'm obviously talking about this on a very, very basic level, but like generally credit card debt is high interest. It's not good debt. People make choices in their lives and then they say to themselves, well, I didn't have a choice but to do that. Yes, you did. Usually. Yes, you did have a choice, right? And so like, I'm going to give you the student loans as an example. And this actually came up last week. I was on a call with a bunch of professional women, and the topic was around finances. And one of the women was talking about how much stress and anxiety her student loans were causing her. And I get it. I also have student loans, but I don't allow them to be stressful in my life. And I'm not criticizing this woman for doing that. But what I will say, being stressed about debt is a choice. It's a choice. You have the power to choose. You can look at it as this is this irritating payment I have to make every month, and because of this, I can't do X, Y, and Z, and it's stressing me out and it's pissing me off and blah, blah, blah. Or you can look at it like this was a decision I made at the time to further my education and perhaps my income earning potential. This is how I view my student debt. I made a choice to go to law school. Nobody put a gun to my head. I decided to do that. I decided to incur debt. I decided to go to the school that I chose to go to. I decided all of these things, right? So the amount of debt that I have was based on choices I made. And I'm okay with that because at the time they were the best decision for me. And I still feel that way, even though it's an amount that I'm like, oh, yeah, I really wish I didn't have to pay that. Well, guess what? I got the benefit of the money and I'm going to have to pay it. That's okay. I don't view it as this giant burden. I just view it as like, okay, this is just some other thing out there that I'm going to, that I have to deal with. But this is what I'm talking about, the power of choice. So people will like, if you have debts and things like that, people they'll tell themselves these stories. Well, I can't afford to do that. Or, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I have to pay all of these other things. Guess what? You made choices that put yourself in that situation. Even the things that you need, even for necessities. Like do we all need a place to live? Yes. And most people get to choose where they live. And by the way, the people that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about people who are living in poverty and maybe actually don't have a choice in where they live because maybe there's only one place for affordable housing that they qualify for. This is not what I'm talking about, you guys. The people that are listening to this podcast are not people that are living below the poverty line. There are definitely people who have to make very difficult choices. They may not have a lot of choices in where they live. They may not have a lot of choices in what they do with their money. They're probably deciding between, can I pay my electric bill or buy my kids food today? These are not the people I'm talking about. I am talking about most other people, which is the people I deal with all the time in my mindset practice and in my law practice. People who have money, they have more money than they think they do, but they've created these stories around them and they make themselves believe that they don't have money, and it is hurting them. And it will hurt you if this is a story that you have in your life. You get to choose what you do. Even if it's for your needs, you choose where you grocery shop. You choose the place that you live. You choose the car that you drive if you have a car. You are making choices in your life every day, and those choices have consequences, whether they are perceived by you as being good or bad. And when you just recognize, like, I have the power to decide what I want to do with my money, it is such a different experience than being like, well, I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You do. You get to choose where you live. I have people tell me all the time, well, I couldn't move anywhere cheaper. BS. That's BS. I'm sorry. It's not true. That's a story I hear from people all the time. Well, I pay already so much, and to live anywhere else in Denver, I couldn't do that any less expensively. Yes, you can. Have you looked? This is the thing. People don't want to do that, right? So like, I live in a very nice neighborhood in Denver. It's more expensive than other neighborhoods. If I was willing to move 1.5 miles east from here to Glendale, which honestly, Glendale is nice, I could live in a place that's twice the size of my current place for the same price. I'm choosing not to do that. right? So people, they'll make choices. They'll rent an apartment, they'll buy a house, they'll move into a place, and then they'll tell themselves, oh, I can't move anywhere less expensively, right? And maybe you can't, but the reason I'm pointing this out is because a lot of people think that they don't have money for things. They would if they just made different lifestyle choices. But people have these stories about, well, I couldn't move anywhere else less expensively. BS. I'm calling people out on this. Yes, you can. It's just that people don't want to. There's a difference between being like, I'm choosing not to do that, and I can't. And people are constantly telling themselves that they can't, and it's keeping you stuck, and it's keeping you broke, and it's keeping you in scarcity. It is not about the circumstances. It is about what you are choosing to believe, and you have the power on how to use your money. Yes, things are more expensive nowadays. There's no question about that. But if you're concerned about expenses, then start finding the less expensive grocery stores. Find coupons, do things. And if you're choosing not to, that's fine. You don't have to cut coupons. I don't want to spend my time doing that. But guess what? The result of me choosing not to do that is that I'm going to pay more. And don't tell me you don't have time. That's another thing that I'm going to like. I can't, when people say they don't have time for stuff, that's also nonsense. You get to choose how you use your time and how you use your money. And people get into these situations like, I can't do this, or I don't have time for that. I have kids. Guess what? You chose to have kids. There's nothing wrong with having kids. I chose to have a dog, and I put a lot of time into my dog, probably more time than most people are willing to do. But that's a choice I made. And when I got my dog, I knew I was going to give him a certain kind of lifestyle that included him being with me the large majority of the time. And I do everything in my power, and I make choices around that decision because that was my choice. So stop using your kids as an excuse for not having money. Stop using your kids as having an excuse for not having time. I'm sorry if you're a parent and you hear this, it makes you mad. That's okay, because everything is a power of choice. You decided to have children, and there are consequences that flow from that. I'll tell you, this is another thing that comes up. And by the way, a lot of my friends have kids, so if you have kids, that's great. But stop using the expenses you pay for them to make yourself think that you don't have the power to choose how you use your money. You do. Right? Like, and yes, there's some expenses that arise for your children that you may not have a choice. Like there may be expenses that you have to pay to the school. I don't know. There may be certain fees like that you just have to pay. But again, instead of looking at these things as burdens, recognizing I chose to have children, and this is what comes along with it. I would say the same thing with cars. People get so upset when car expenses arise. I get it. I just had to have 2 different services done on my car. And I'll tell you, both times that I went, I said this to myself. I could choose to get a less expensive vehicle, and these costs would be lower. Which is the truth. I am making a decision to have a car. I am making a decision to have the particular car that I have. And I knew when I bought this car, by the way, I do have an expensive vehicle. It's a luxury vehicle, but like it's, by most people's standards, they would consider it an expensive vehicle. I didn't, because I didn't actually pay as much as people think I did. But I have a car that is expensive, and it's expensive to fix. And I knew when I bought it that was going to happen. So why would I be pissed off about it? Right? When I took that to get serviced, this is what I said to myself. I'm grateful I have a car. I'm grateful this car has been so useful to me in helping me get around, and that I've actually not had very many problems with it. And having to get service is a consequence of me making the choice to own a car. And if I want to pay less in service or repair fees or service fees, I could get a less expensive car. That's the conversation I have with myself when these kinds of things come up. Most people are like irritated. They're pissed off. They're annoyed. They're mad. They can't afford it. Don't buy a car. Right? And I'm not really like telling you to not have a car. I mean, it is hard to get around without one. I will give you that. But that being said, I've had times where I didn't have a car and I took public transportation everywhere, and my life was actually, I would say it was very liberating to not have a car. I didn't have a car for like 2 years. Anyway, when people say stuff like that, well, I can't get a different car. Why? Right? That's a mindset. You've decided now that you can't have a less expensive car. Why? Status? You're afraid of what people will think about you. Those are other things that need to be healed that I can't go into. But everything is a choice. So every time an expense comes up in your life, recognize you decide if you pay it. You get to decide whether you're paying it or not. It's based on choices that you made, and you can choose differently. There's very few people that can't choose differently. There definitely are some, but they're probably not listening to this podcast right now. They're not people that come to see me for mindset work. I see people's finances all the time. So I don't just, when I do mindset work, I'm not going through people's finances. If they want me to, I'm happy to go through and, make recommendations on what I think they could be changed. But as a lawyer, I'm often dealing with people that have very, very high debts to the IRS. And in that connection, I have to review their financials, I have to review their assets, their income, their expenses, and I get the same story all the time. I don't have the money to pay them. A lot of times people do. It's just that they're choosing not to because they've made lifestyle choices that don't allow them to actually have money freed up to do it. And all they need to do is make some different lifestyle choices. And that's the thing. People don't want to do that. So then they get in this in their mindset. Well, I just can't. I don't have the money to do it. Yes, you do. You may not have the money in your account at this moment, but if you shifted things around a little bit and made some different choices, you might. Right? I have a client recently who moved the entire family in with either parents or in-laws to save money. Do most people want to do that? No, they don't. But is that a potentially very good financial choice for somebody to get out of a debt? Yes. Right? So don't tell me that you don't have money. Don't tell me that I don't have choices. Everyone has choices. There's very few people that don't. So start looking at the expenses you have in your life as these are choices I've made, and how can I choose differently in the future, right? Like if you have a big debt, you can't maybe necessarily do anything about it now. Maybe you qualify for bankruptcy. Maybe you qualify for some sort of debt settlement. Maybe there's a way for you to get lower interest rates. Maybe you can consolidate it. I don't know. There's lots of things that you can do, but you can't necessarily undo a debt you've made, but you can change your perspective on it moving forward. If you have high credit card debt, that was incurred as a result of choices that were made. Maybe you had to pay them to cover medical expenses. I recognize again that there's exceptions to these rules, but for the large majority of your expenses, it's based on choices. People are incurring debt as a result of choice. And a lot of what's happening when people are incurring debt is they are not making good enough decisions in their day-to-day life to have money in savings so that they don't have to incur debt. And again, I recognize that there are people that don't have the ability to put money in savings. I've had times in my life where that's happened. And I had many years of struggle when I was in college. And for the several years after that, I lived paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't, sometimes pay all of my bills. I've been there. I've not ever had to be confronted with, of course, am I going to pay my electricity bill or put food in my child's mouth? That's a very hard decision to make. And I'm going to say this again. Those are not the people that are listening to this podcast right now. It's generally people who have made choices in their lives, and because of choices that were made, lifestyle choices, they are in the positions they are in. And then they continue to say, oh, I don't have a choice to do that. Yes, you do. I actually had somebody, there was an interesting conversation I'd had with somebody I know who had quit a job, voluntarily quit a job. And, do I think people should stay in jobs they don't like? No. But do I think that you should do it and make sure that you have good options in place, savings, money to live off of, plans of how you're going to get by in the interim? Yes. Sometimes that's not possible. But I had known somebody that quit a job and then had this kind of resentment towards everybody else about the choices they had made in their life. And I would say things like, well, I don't have the luxury of doing that. And I wanted to say, yes, you do. You just made different choices than we made. You made a different choice than I made. You made a different choice than that person made. There's nothing wrong with that, but stop being pissed off at other people about financial decisions that you're making in your own life. It's not helping you. It's dragging you down, and it's going to keep you being broke and feeling like you don't have money. Everyone has $5 they can come up with. Everyone. Again, people below the poverty line, that's not what I'm talking about. Most people can find $5 somewhere. Most people can. You can find $5 a week that you can start, even a month that you can start putting in a savings account. A lot of people won't do that because they think it's not enough, or because they're just, who knows? But then they're mad that they don't have money in savings. They're mad that they have debt. They're mad that they don't feel like they can make choices in their lives when everything is a choice. So, recognizing where the choices that you're making are actually being, like, you're hiding behind habits, lifestyle choices, or maybe even sometimes societal pressure, parental pressure, societal pressure, religious pressure, I don't know. But it's like this illusion that you don't have choice is going to keep you broke forever. And yes, there's a difference between a lifestyle choice of something that you want versus something that you need. But even when it comes to shelter, food, medical expenses, things like that, you do, for the most part, get to choose what you are doing. You get to choose where you live. If you're choosing to live in a more expensive neighborhood, the consequences of that is that you may not have as much for other needs or wants. And you may need to make a decision to live in a smaller or less expensive place. Some people don't want to do that, and they'll tell themselves the story, well, I can't do that. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. Having that awareness will dramatically change things that are going on in your life. Stop saying, I can't afford this. Saying, I'm choosing not to spend my money on that right now. I've talked about this before. The language that you use empowers you and creates ownership of your financial reality. You get to change it. You got yourself where you are. You can make changes anytime you want. And that helps people build confidence and remove shame over the choices that they've made. When you continue to look at every single choice as if it's not a choice, it's not going to help you get further ahead. It's not going to get you more money. I can guarantee you that, because if you get more money, you will continue to make lifestyle choices that keep you broke. I see it constantly. You have to align your money choices with your values and priorities for money. Recognizing that every single expense that you pay, every dollar that goes out the door is something you choose. And, recognizing that there are also exceptions for emergencies and things that are non-negotiables in your life. And so I would have you, this may get people riled up, but that's actually my hope, is that you start to realize that you get to choose the decisions that you're making in your life. Somebody else is not getting you into debt. Somebody else has not decided you have to live in this house. Somebody else did not tell you have to pay for all private school for your kids. And again, that's not a judgment, by the way. I'm not judging anyone for the financial choices that they make or do not make. But you've chosen the circumstances that you're in for the most part. So you get to choose how to change it. Somebody else isn't going to do that for you. So I would, if you really want to work on this, I would write down where in your life you're saying, I have to do this with money, or I don't have a choice. Like, if you catch yourself saying, I don't have a choice, you have got to switch that and say, I have the choice to make decisions in my life. Because that's the truth. You always have the power of choice. Always, 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 always. Now, maybe you didn't if you got into a car accident, right? Again, there's always exceptions to these things. That's not what I'm talking about. You chose whether you did or didn't go to school and incur debt. You chose to put things on credit cards. You choose where you live. You choose what you're spending on clothes, if anything. You choose where you grocery shop. You choose the car that you have. You're choosing these things. And if you may have beliefs that are keeping you broke. You're not going to realize it until you sit down and say, where am I saying in my life I don't have choice? Where are you saying I don't have a choice but to pay for this? Yes, you do. You always have a choice. If you're not sure about something, message me. Just ask me the question, hey, I'm really struggling to understand why this is why I feel like this isn't a choice. Message me. Send me a message through Instagram, email me, contact me. I'm happy to have discussions with people. Now, I'm not going to give you a full session, but if you have a question here or there, I'm happy to help you reframe something a little bit. Or if you're really struggling with something like, I can't figure out why I'm having a hard time recognizing what's a choice versus what's an obligation that I feel like I have no control over, let me know. But if you recognize how you take ownership of your own choices and what you're spending money on, it's going to reduce your stress and anxiety around money, and it's going to provide more clarity about what your priorities for money are. right? Like if you go to the gas station and you're putting money to get gas, you are choosing to get it at that gas station, even though it might be cheaper a couple blocks down. This is the thing. A lot of people get so mad that things are so expensive, but they won't spend the time to figure out how they can do things less expensively. Not everyone, but some people. There are apps that tell you where's the least expensive gas in your area. There are apps that will compare all of the items in your grocery cart and tell you which grocery store it makes the most sense for you to buy them on based on what's happening right now and on coupons that are available. You guys, there's apps for all of this stuff. You just have to take the time to find it. And most people won't do that. And so it's like, if you're choosing not to take the time to find less expensive alternatives for things in your lives, then don't be pissed off about the amount of money you're spending on things. Everything is a choice. But just start writing down, where in my life do I say I have to with money or I don't have a choice? And start to replace that with, I'm choosing my money to spend on X because X, right? Like I'm choosing to spend money on student loans because I made a choice many years ago to go to law school, and I'm pleased with the choice I made. That completely changes the way I view this debt in my life. There are people that view debts as if it's like the most devastating thing that has ever happened in their life. And I don't understand why, because it's almost always from a choice that that person made. It may not have seemed like the best choice in hindsight, but you made a decision in the moment and now you've moved on and here we are. Stop looking at student loans as if they're irritating. Stop looking at mortgages as if they're irritating. If you have credit card debt, you need to get that paid off as quickly as possible. But recognize that you made choices that got yourself there. Right? And I could go on and on for hours about this, you guys, because this is like something I see so constantly. And I just want to shake people and be like, stop acting like you didn't make these choices. The things that are happening in your life are the result of choices that you made. Again, this is not including unexpected things that happen to people that they don't have any control over. I'm talking about the large majority of the things happening in our lives. You are where you are because of the choices that you made, period. Recognize that. Take power over it. Be like, yes, I made these choices. And even though they maybe don't align with what I would do in my life now, I made them. And I have the power to decide what to do with them now. I get to decide where I spend my money. I get to decide which gas station I go to. I get to decide where I go get groceries. I get to decide what kind of car I have. I get to decide whether or not I pay for my kids to go to public school or not. I get to decide X. I get to decide if I buy a coffee today or not. Go through all of these things and be like, I'm in control here. The amount of power that this gives people is like, I can't put a dollar value on it because it's so much more valuable than money. Recognizing that you have the power to choose what's happening in your life is invaluable. Things are not happening to you. They are happening for you, and you have a choice. So if you have questions, again, please reach out to me. I hope that you take this and are able to make some changes in your life today and make some changes in your spending as a result of looking at things a little bit differently. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Bye.
Hey, before you go, would you love to receive my 3-step masterclass to easily create and hold wealth for free? It's called Effortless Money, and it includes the exact framework to start attracting money effortlessly and manifesting abundance with more ease. If you want it for free, all you have to do is leave an honest review of the Wealth Embodied podcast, take a screenshot of this episode and put it in your Instagram stories and tag me at Brianna_Faringer, and we will send you the free Effortless Money Masterclass. This is how my clients have manifested a $13,000 check, a promotion resulting in a $30,000 salary increase, and significantly improved relationships. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on the Wealth Embodied podcast.